The road cracks first near the shoulder, thin fractures spreading across the asphalt like veins. 6 months old and already coming apart. The community saved for 3 years to fund their portion of this highway. Market women setting aside small notes, farmers contributing from harvest money they didn't have to spare. The official report blames unexpected soil conditions, heavy rains, the usual list of things that aren't anybody's fault. But the real story starts with Tunde, a 27-year-old site engineer who saw the problem on the very first day of pouring and couldn't unsee it. This isn't about government failure. It's about what one man does when the system hands him a choice with no good answer. Tunde's job was simple on paper. Verify materials before they hit the ground, sign off on quality, move to the next section. The manifest listed Grade A bitumen, imported, certified, the kind rated for 20 years under tropical sun. What actually arrived on the trucks was different, darker, thinner, a chemical smell that was sharp and wrong, nothing like the heavy petroleum scent of proper road-grade asphalt, the kind of mix that softens the moment the sun climbs past noon. He checked the supplier code against the approved list from the ministry. The supplier wasn't on it, wasn't even close. Wrong region, wrong certification number, a company name that didn't appear in any official record anywhere. He was still standing there with the clipboard when a senior colleague pulled him aside. "Oga, you're looking too hard," the man said, voice low and almost kind. "This is how we do it here." Tunde had been an engineer for 4 years. He'd seen corners cut before. A few bags of cement missing here, some undersized rebar there. Small things, manageable things you learned to look past if you wanted to keep walking. But this road was different. It connected 3 farming communities to the main market in Akure: cassava farmers, yam farmers, women who sold processed gari in bulk. During the rainy season, this stretch of asphalt was the only way out. No alternative routes, no back paths, just this single road winding through low hills and red earth. The ghost operation was simple once you understood the shape of it. Money allocated for premium imported materials. Invoices showing premium imported prices. But what showed up on site was what maybe half that. The gap, somewhere around 40 million naira, had disappeared into a chain of hands and accounts that nobody in Ondo State seemed interested in tracing. Tunde took the manifest home that night and spread the papers across his small dining table. He started running the numbers, tapping them into his calculator while the ceiling fan clicked overhead, and the math just kept getting worse. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up to the site in the middle of the afternoon. A man in a cream agbada stepped out, all smiles, shaking hands with the site supervisor like they were old friends from university. He wasn't from the ministry. He wasn't from the contracting firm, at least not on any paperwork. He was a consultant, the kind who consults on making problems disappear. They sat in the site office, just the two of them, with the fan rattling and the heat pressing against the windows, and the faint smell of bitumen drifting in from outside. The man spoke low and calm, the voice of someone explaining how the world actually works to a younger colleague who hadn't figured it out yet. The consultancy fee was 3.5 million naira, cash, no records, no transfers, no paper trail. Just a handshake and Tunde's signature on the quality report, confirming that the materials on site matched the manifest. Here's what you need to understand about where Tunde was standing in that moment. His mother needs surgery, a procedure the teaching hospital in Ibadan won't schedule without a deposit of 2.8 million naira upfront. Not a negotiation, not a payment plan, cash before care. His sister calls him every other night, her voice getting sharper with each conversation, asking if he's found the money yet, asking what kind of son lets his mother wait like this. The man in the Agbada knew this somehow. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he just got lucky with the number. But 3.5 million covers the surgery deposit with 700,000 left over. Enough to clear some debts. Enough to breathe for the first time in months. The logic the man laid out was almost elegant. "Nobody gets hurt," he said, spreading his hands wide. The road will still work for a few years, maybe 3 or 4. By the time it starts failing, everyone will blame the government anyway. They always do. It's practically a national tradition. Nobody will trace anything back to a junior site engineer who just signed what he was told to sign. "You're not the one stealing," he said. "You're just not being difficult." That's the quiet mathematics of corruption. The cost gets spread so thin across. If Tunde signs that report and takes the money, this is what actually happens. Not the abstract version of corruption being bad, no lectures, no principles, just the specific chain of events that unfolds from one signature on one piece of paper. The road opens with a celebration. The commissioner cuts a ribbon. Photographs get taken, hands get shaken, speeches mention progress and bringing government closer to the people. The farmers cheer because they've waited years for this road, and now it's here, black and smooth, cutting through the hills they've known since childhood. Then the first rainy season arrives. The thin asphalt softens under heat and water working together. Heavy trucks from the market grind ruts into the surface, deep grooves that fill with mud and refuse to drain. The drainage channels weren't built properly either, because that budget was also ghost money, siphoned off by a different set of hands. But the result is the same. Standing water eats the road from the edges inward. Within 18 months, it's worse than the old dirt path it replaced. At least the dirt path drained. At least you could repay it with shovels and gravel and community labor. Now, imagine a specific night during that second rainy season. A woman in labor, contractions coming fast and hard. An ambulance trying to reach the hospital in Akure. The driver can't avoid the ruts because there are too many of them. Tires spin. Mud sprays against the undercarriage. They lose 40 minutes. 40 minutes with a baby in distress and no way to move forward. And by the time they reach the teaching hospital, the damage is already done. The baby survives, but with complications that will need years of care. Care the family cannot afford because the mother was supposed to sell her harvest at the market that season. And now the harvest is rotting in storage because the road is impassable and the middlemen with trucks won't risk the journey anymore. Nobody connects any of this to Tunde's signature. There's no straight line from a folded envelope in a site office to a damaged child in a hospital ward. The connection doesn't exist in any way a court would recognize or a newspaper would trace. But it exists, buried in the aggregate of small corruptions that have turned Nigeria's infrastructure into a graveyard of almost good enough projects. Roads that looked fine at the ribbon cutting and failed before the ink on the contract was dry. Tunde doesn't know about this specific ambulance this specific night, but he knows about ones like it. He's lived in Ondo State his whole life. He knows what happens when a road fails during the rains and someone needs a hospital. He thinks about his mother, the woman who taught him to read by candlelight during NEPA outages, who sold her jewelry to pay his school fees when his father's business collapsed. He thinks about what she would say if she knew the money for her surgery came from a handshake in a hot site office. And somewhere in the long hours of that night, watching the bats trace circles around the streetlight outside his apartment, he makes his choice. Tunde doesn't sign the report. Instead, he photocopies the real manifest, the fake manifest, every supplier invoice he can get his hands on, and walks the whole stack to a journalist in Akure he trusts, a man who covers local government and doesn't scare easy. The consequences come fast. Tunde gets fired within a week, escorted off the site like he's the one who did something wrong. His name circulates among the contracting firms in Ondo State, not formally blacklisted, but effectively the same thing. His phone stops ringing with job offers. Savings drain while he sits in his apartment waiting for calls that never come. His mother's surgery gets postponed. His sister cries on the phone, and he doesn't know what to tell her, except the truth, that he couldn't do it, couldn't sign his name to something that would hurt people he'd never meet. But the story breaks, first in a small regional paper in Akure, the kind people read while waiting for their Okada riders to finish fueling. Then a national outlet picks it up, runs with the details, names the supplier that doesn't exist and the company that signed off on it. The community starts asking questions. The farmers, the market women who contributed their small notes to the road fund, the clinic workers who know what the dirt path costs them every rainy season. They show up at local government meetings demanding answers. The contractor, suddenly exposed and facing questions from the actual ministry, the one that hadn't known about any ghost supplier, gets pressured into action. The road gets torn up and rebuilt properly. Materials that match the manifest. An engineer Tunde recommends, a younger guy who inspects every truckload like his career depends on it because it does. 2 years later, the road is still standing. Through 2 full rainy seasons now. It drains. It holds. Farmers get their cassava and yams to market on time. The ambulance can make it through. Tunde's mother eventually gets her surgery through a community contribution. The same community that read about her son in the paper. The same people who understood what he gave up so their road wouldn't collapse under the next rain. People who had never met him passed envelopes to a collection that made the deposit and then some. The ripple nobody talks about happens quietly in the months after. Other young engineers in Ondo State, on other sites, start asking questions, demanding to see manifests, refusing the quiet handshake, the friendly advice to stop looking so hard. One of them calls Tunde late at night, a number he doesn't recognize, and asks how he did it, how he walked into that newsroom knowing what it would cost him. Tunde tells him the truth. It wasn't courage, it was just the math. The road is still there, still holding. The farmers who use it every day don't know Tunde's name. They just know something works that wasn't supposed to work. That's what integrity looks like in the end. Invisible, taken for granted, indistinguishable from a functioning country. If this story hits something in you, subscribe and share it, because the next Tunde is out there right now, deciding whether anyone will have their back.